Hello, wonderful students. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are watching me or from which time you are watching me or you're listening to this audio. Welcome to another lesson, and we've been discussing or learning about poetry, and I also want to continue with other stylistic features. We have looked at sound patterns in poetry, so I want to get to other stylistic features. And before I continue, I want to thank you very much for listening to my audio. The number is increasing day by day, and even students are asking questions. There's a student who has asked again about how to understand poetry. The way to understand poetry is first know that poetry is not difficult. Read the poem once, read it again before even reading the questions, and read it for the third time. Poetry is not difficult. I don't know why students feel like poetry is difficult, but it is not difficult. The meanings to words in poems are within the poem. So just read it as you read comprehensions and understand comprehensions, and also pay attention to content words in poems. Okay, so that is how I can explain how to understand poetry and understand the terms used in poetry. Like the terms I have given, there are terms for sound patterns, there are terms for imagery. Those are other stylistic devices that I'm about to talk about. Also familiarize yourself with the kind of questions, and that is why at the beginning of poetry I started with the terms used in poetry, so that when we meet them as we discuss poetry, then it shall be easy for you to understand poetry. So look at the terms used for paper 1 poem and for paper 2 poem, which is oral poem. That is how you will understand poetry. Familiarize yourself with the terms, understand them even before you read a poem. First read about the terms and understand them, so that when you go to a poem it shall be very easy for you to identify the styles. Okay, so the first stylistic feature that I want us to look at, stylistic feature or stylistic device that brings about image. All other stylistic features bring about image. The first that I talked about, they bring about sound. The others that I'm talking about in this lesson bring about image in the mind of the reader. And that is the intention of the poet, that his or her poem will be understood in a way that the reader can be able to bring that poem in mind and understand it. That is why the poets use stylistic devices. And the first stylistic device that I'll talk about is simile. Simile, I know you've come across it even in primary, and simile is an image that compares two things that have something in common. And the comparison is so direct in that it uses the word like or as beautiful as handsome as tall as. Okay, that is what we call simile. Are we together? And simile goes hand in hand with the other term called metaphor. So you can be asked a question, identify imagery in the poem. Imagery, you'll talk about what I am teaching today. They bring about image. So the second one is metaphor. So metaphor is figure of speech that makes comparison between two unlike things without using like or as. Okay, it doesn't use like or as in simile. You are a giraffe, so that tells you you're very tall. Okay, so it doesn't, but it brings about image. The third one is personification. So personification refers to giving attributes, values, and qualities of a human being to non-human things. when you talk about a wailing wall in Israel, there's a wailing wall. So what wails is a human being or an animal. But now the stone or the wall has been given the attribute of wailing. That is what we call personification, giving human traits to non-living things. The other one is symbolism. Symbolism is when a character or an object is used to represent somebody or something else. So if I go back to the book that Form 4s are doing right now in the excerpt, that is A Doll's House. A Doll's House. Dr. Rank talks about a cross. So that cross signifies his death. Okay, it symbolizes his death. So Nora is told when you'll see a cross, then she will know that Dr. Rank is normal. So symbols are used to represent something. A dove has been used to represent what? Peace. So symbolism. So a poet can decide to use symbolism to make his work more understandable to students. The other one is hyperbole. Hyperbole, it is exaggeration or overstatement. Exaggeration or overstatement. I teach boys, and the age bracket that I teach is an age bracket that really loves food. And if you happen to extend the lesson of a lunch hour, you'll see the concentration has gone down. So when I'm using hyperbole, I tell them, I'm very hungry. I can eat a whole elephant. In real sense, can you eat a whole elephant? Really? So hyperbole is exaggeration or overstatement. So you present something beyond the ordinary. So it is used to impress the reader and influence his judgment. This person was very hungry. The other one is irony. Irony is the next style. This is a stylistic device that uses contradictory statement or situation to reveal a reality that is different from what happens or appears to be true. So the writer can also use irony, and in irony it shall help you to answer poetry question and also set book questions, because we have two types of irony, that is verbal irony and situational irony. So verbal irony, which is the contrast difference between what is said and what is meant. So it's about what the character is saying, and in poetry what the poet is saying and what is really meant. So situational irony, which is the contrast or difference between what is expected and what actually happens. For example, the situation irony, let me refer back to excerpt A Doll's House. So situation irony, you'd expect that when Helmer understands that Nora borrowed a loan without his consent in order to save his life, you'd expect that he would forgive Nora and see her as a very caring woman. What happened? He started abusing what? He started abusing Nora. So that is a situation. You'd expect that he would be happy and forgive Nora, but what happens in real sense, he does not forgive and Nora decides to leave. The situation at hand makes Nora leave. So the same in poetry. When you're reading poem, there is that which is expected and that which really happens. The other one is sarcasm. Sarcasm is a strong form of verbal irony. It can be described as a bitter remark or speech intended to hurt someone's feelings. For example, congratulations for failing. I mean, that person is sarcastic. You have failed and she is telling you congratulations. So that is sarcasm. Sorry, it's sarcasm. The next one is satire. Satire. This is a device whose intention is to criticize human weaknesses or to expose the folly of an idea or an institution in a humorous way. And this one is very common in newspapers, where you find that the writers of newspapers really use satire to bring forth a weakness of maybe a political party or something that is happening in the world or in the country, but in form of satire. Okay, so that is another style that a poet can use. The other one is repetition. Repetition is what? A word, phrase, or a line may be repeated in a poem, and it is used to emphasize ideas or certain features in that poem. So some have been saying that repetition is part of sound pattern. No, if you have been asked, sound pattern is what I taught. Repetition is under other stylistic features. And we move to the next one, which is allegory. The next one is allegory. This is a device related to symbolism since it uses lots of symbol. However, it concentrates on making ideas important rather than the character. The other one is suspense. Suspense is the feeling of tension, worry, or anxiety of waiting to know what happens or what may happen after a situation. That is suspense. We move to rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions are questions that really do not need an answer, but they bring forth information. They really do not need an answer, or they do not need what? A response. Parallelism. Parallelism, this means the statement being parallel to the other. It is a close resemblance between two things. This can express episodes, it can express units or characters, especially for purposes of comparison. Okay, the other one is allusion. Allusion refers to an indirect reference to something, a known story, a situation, or an event, or a known person, so as to clarify a message being put across. The other one is contrast. Contrast. Contrast refers to a comparison between two objects, people, or events. It means to compare so as to point out the difference set off against one another. Contrast. Okay, that is contrast. The other one is apostrophe. Apostrophe is a style of addressing an object or an absent person as if they were alive and able to respond. I hope we are still learning something. The other one is paradox. Paradox, this refers to a situation, a fact, or a statement which seems impossible to understand because it contains two opposite facts or characteristics. And the last one is understatement. This is the opposite of a statement, which we called what? Please answer in the comment section. It is used when an object, something, or somebody is described in a way that is diminishing. Are we together? So that is what you would expect to answer in poems. So your work is to read a poem. You'll find that some have many of these imagery or stylistic devices. Not all poems have all this. So it's your work to read and understand the terms so that you can be able to identify them in the poem. So thank you for listening. If you have questions, please write them on the comment section. I'll be ready to answer your question. and be happy to know that you're understanding everything that I am teaching. Refer to your books, do exercises, and make sure you give your teachers for marking. Goodbye.